Hey everybody, my name is Alex with Hake Hardware, and in this video we are going to mount a physical drive to WSL with Windows 11. So this is basically what we're doing is attaching or passing through a raw disk to WSL so that we can do cool things like use an ext4 partition on that drive or use it as a mount for Docker desktop. There's a lot of different reasons why you might want to do this. So let's get started and go over the steps. So this wiki will be linked in the description of the video, and we're basically just going to go through all the steps in Windows, and I'll show you exactly how to do it. So let's jump to Windows, and the first thing we're going to do is open up a terminal with admin privileges, and we want to find out which disk we want to pass through. So there's a command, and I already have WSL installed. You should have WSL installed before going through this. We're going to run this command here, just copy paste it from the wiki, and it's going to show all of our physical drives. And for me, I'm actually running, it's kind of like an inception thing here. I'm running proxmox, which has a Windows 11 VM, which is then running WSL with an Ubuntu VM. So a VM inside a VM, but that's why we see QEMU for my disks instead of just like a regular disk. You're probably just going to see like a regular disk drive. But the main point is we need to find out which one of these physical drives we want to pass through. So go back to your start menu, right click, and open up disk management. I'm just going to hit cancel here. I get that pop up because I have some unallocated disks, and those are the ones that I want to pass through. So I can see there's disk 0, 1, and 2, and we have physical drive 0, 1, and 2. Those correspond to each other. So I know disk 0 is my operating system. 1 and 2 are the two disks that I'm eventually going to pass through, and we're just going to cover passing through one of them in this tutorial. So now that I know which disk, which I'm actually going to do physical drive 1, we can test basically passing it through and attaching it. And there's two ways to do this. First is if you don't care about how it's mounted, you can just do a command like this without the bear. So WSL -mount and then physical drive, whichever one you choose. And if you do that, you will see that it automatically mounts it to this WSL physical drive 1 location. And if we go into WSL and we do df-h, we can see that that disk is now mounted to that automatically. So if that's all you care about is just having it mounted automatically, then you can just skip to the part where we do the scheduled task, and we're going to schedule a task that runs this command at login. But if you want to mount it to a specific mount point, so I like to mount my disks to /media and then a specific name for the disk like SSD or something, then you would want to actually create a fstab file entry that will automatically mount this disk. And if we exit, there's another way to run this command. So first I'm going to do onmount to unmount this. We can run this command now, the mount one again, but this time we're going to do --bear. And what that does is it just passes through the drive. It doesn't try and mount it. So we can see instead of it saying that it was successfully mounted, it's just saying that the operation was completed successfully. And if we go into WSL and we do df-h, we can see it's not mounted. But if we do lsblk, we can see that that disk does exist and it is on the system. It's just like an uninitialized or unmounted disk. So first, let's go ahead and put a file system on it. So I'm going to do sudo NTFS-ext4 because that's one of the benefits, right? Is now I can put whatever file system I want on it. Typically, if you were to pass through like a Windows disk, it would be stuck as NTFS, and nobody really likes that. So we're going to do -m0, which will set the reserve space to 0 to give me the maximum amount of space on this disk. It's not a root file system. It's not an operating system disk, so I don't need reserved space. I can just do the whole drive. And then I'll select my device, dev SDC, go ahead and get this formatted. All right, so now that we have our file system on it, we can create the mount point. So like I said, I like to mount my disks to /media. So sudo make dir media SSD. That's where I'm going to mount it. And then we need to get the UUID of the disk. So lsblk-f will give us the UUID. So I'm just going to copy it. It was SDC, so I'm going to copy that. And then we need to create an fstab entry. So sudo nano etc fstab. And we're going to create an entry here. So we'll do UUID equals and then paste in your UUID. We'll do a tab, and we want to put the mount point. So media SSD tab ext4 is the file system. We'll do defaults, and I'm going to just leave it as defaults, and then 0, 0. And we'll do Control X, Y, enter, and then we'll run sudo systemctl daemon reload, and then sudo mount-a. And then if we do df-a or df-h, we should see that it is now mounted. So we used our fstab entry to mount it, and it mounted successfully. So we know that when we have it mounted automatically in the future, it's going to work. So there's basically two actions that have to occur, and neither of these happen automatically by default. That's why first we had to create the fstab file and then set it to mount this device automatically to this mount point. So that was step one. Now when we log in, we boot up basically our VM, it's going to automatically mount the disk, but the disk needs to be attached for it to mount it. So the second step is to ensure that Windows mounts the disk to WSL. So if you remember, we had that command we ran initially. We need this to be run automatically because by default, that disk is not going to be attached. And to do this, we're going to use the task scheduler. So go into the search bar, type task scheduler, and then we're going to create a new task. So create task over here on the right-hand side. We're going to call it WSL mount task. Run only when users logged in is fine. Make sure it says run with highest privileges. That's extremely important. We'll go to triggers. We'll do new. We'll do at logon. So this trigger is going to run when you log on, and it's going to be enabled, so make sure that's enabled. We'll click OK. That trigger is saved. We're going to go to Actions, click New. Start a program is fine, so leave that. We're going to type cmd.exe, so it's going to basically run a terminal window, and then we want to execute a specific command. And I'm actually going to jump over into the browser here. And we're going to go down, and this is the command, the argument basically that we're going to be adding. That's the one that we ran earlier. Now you're going to want to update this physical drive number to whatever you want to drive, or whatever you want to mount. So I'm just going to copy this because this is actually what I want to do. And then we'll move back over, and I'm just going to do Control V and paste that in there. You don't need anything else. You can just click OK, and you can see command.exe, and then it's going to run that mount command with --bear. And we do it this way because we just want to attach it. Then when you log into your Ubuntu VM, that fstab file is going to mount it automatically to the specific place that we want it to be mounted. Conditions, I just uncheck. Settings, I usually check run task as soon as possible after a schedule start is missed. I don't know if this helps or not, but if for some reason it doesn't run at start or at logon, then I'm thinking that this might automatically run. May or may not need it. It can't hurt to check it. Then click OK. Now, we can test this if we want. So if we go back in here and we just do unmount. So now that physical drive is unmounted. If I were to go into Ubuntu, I wouldn't see this dev SDC anymore. It's gone. But let's test out our task scheduler by right-clicking on it and clicking Run. And I believe that means it worked. So let's go into WSL and we'll do df-h and we see that it is mounted. So another way to make sure that it works is if you go to your start menu and then sign out, then you sign back in. If it all is connected and attached, then you did it correctly. All right, that finishes it up. So this disk is now automatically going to be mounted, and if you have like Docker Desktop, you can add Ubuntu or your WSL instance or the Linux instance that you have installed to Docker Desktop, and you can use this as a bind mount. There's a lot of different things that this opens up, which is pretty cool. So hopefully it was helpful. If it was, leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.